At 5:42 a.m. on March 3rd, 1945, a B-25 bomber sat cold on a coral airstrip in the northern Marianas. The sun wasn't up yet. The air smelled like fuel, salt, and wet dust. The war in the Pacific was entering its final months, but for the 9 men assigned to that aircraft, the day had already gone wrong. Their left engine wouldn't hold fuel pressure. Every time they primed it, started it, and ran it above idle, the pressure dropped to 0. Then the engine quit. Normally that meant delaying takeoff today. Delaying meant missing the strike formation, assembling offshore, and missing the formation meant flying alone over open ocean straight into Japanese airspace with no protection. Everyone on the crew knew what that meant. The crew chief, Technical Sergeant Miller, had grease on his shirt, dust on his boots, and 2 hours of frustration behind his eyes. He'd already replaced 1 gasket, then 2, then checked the fuel pump screen. Nothing worked. The engine kept starving, coughing, and dying. Across the runway, under guard, a group of Japanese prisoners swept coral dust into piles. Some were barely older than boys. Others looked older than the war itself. Most kept their heads down. One didn't. He was a thin man with square shoulders and a quiet stare. His name was Masaru Sato, 31, once a mechanic for the Imperial Navy. Before the war, he repaired fishing engines in Kagoshima. He wasn't supposed to be near American aircraft. His job here was sweeping dust, but he watched the engine, and he recognized something most Americans didn't notice. When the B-25 sputtered and died again, Sato flinched the moment the RPM dipped. He mouthed a single word to himself, barely noticeable. Fuel, leak. The guard nudged him with his rifle butt. Keep sweeping. Back at the bomber, Miller dropped his wrench and wiped sweat from his eyes. Damn thing's gonna cost us this mission, he muttered. The pilot, Lieutenant Henry Collins, paced behind him. We've got 15 minutes, Collins said. Formation leaves with or without us. Miller shook his head. Sir, something's bleeding pressure. We're chasing ghosts. Another try. Another start. Another sputter. Engine dead. Collins looked at the rise of light on the horizon and exhaled through his teeth. We fly today, he said, or we go home with nothing to show but a busted engine. The guard line walked their prisoners toward the supply shack. As they passed the B-25, Sato slowed just enough to glance at the engine one more time. He saw a faint glimmer on the lower cowling. Fuel a drip, a direction. He stopped walking. The guard shoved him. Move. Sato bowed his head, but he raised one finger toward the nacelle. Leak, he said quietly. Leak. Lower fitting. The guard frowned. English only, he barked, but Collins heard it. He turned. You, Collins said, pointing. You said something. Sato hesitated, then nodded once. Leak? Fitting? He repeated, choosing each word carefully. The guard shook his head. He's a prisoner, sir. Probably messing with you. But Miller stepped closer, wiping his hands. Where? He asked. Sato tapped the air, shaping an invisible pipe with his fingers. Then he angled his hand downward. Lower feed. Little crack pressure go out. Miller stared at him. You're a mechanic? Sato nodded again. Imperial Navy. Engines. The guard put a hand on Sato's shoulder. He is not authorized. Collins cut him off. If he knows something, I want to hear it. The guard looked uneasy, but he stepped back. Miller climbed under the nacelle with a flashlight. Following the direction Sato had indicated, he froze. A 1/4-inch hairline split on the auxiliary feed fitting, so small it was almost invisible, but enough that under high draw fuel leaked instead of flowing. Miller cursed under his breath. Well, I'll be damned, he whispered. He's right. Collins knelt beside him. How bad? Miller exhaled. Bad enough you can't pressure test this line without a proper cap, and we don't have a spare fitting anywhere on the island. Sato watched them. Standing still, hands at his sides, Miller came out from under the nacelle. We need a fix, he said quietly. A real one. Collins looked toward the prisoners. There were rules pages of them. None of them allowed a POW near a U.S. combat aircraft. But time was gone. Sato stepped forward without being asked. Can fix, he said. The guard stiffened. No, he said, absolutely not. But Collins raised a hand. What do you need? He asked Sato. Sato considered the engine, then tapped 2 fingers together. Soft metal, thin and wire. Miller blinked. A patch? Sato shook his head. Shim, he said. Inside fitting, tight. Hold pressure for one mission. How do you know it'll last? Collins asked, Sato's eyes lowered. Don't know, he said, but engine start, you fly. That was all he promised. Collins and Miller exchanged a look. Miller sighed. Sir, we don't have another option. Collins nodded. Do it. The guard protested again, but Collins cut him off with a sharp order. The guard stepped back, jaw clenched. Sato removed his cap, set it down neatly, and walked toward the engine with the quiet confidence of someone who had done this kind of work 100 times before. He didn't rush. He didn't tremble. He simply knelt, like a man returning to an old job he never expected to see again. Miller handed him a small strip of brass from a busted radio bracket and a length of safety wire. Sato shaped the brass with a file, working it thinner and thinner until it flexed between his fingers. Then he rolled it into a tight spiral, a handmade internal shim. He tapped it lightly, listening to the sound, making sure it was even. The guard watched with unease. You sure he's not sabotaging something? He muttered. Miller didn't answer. Sato slid the shim inside the cracked fitting, twisted it until it locked, then wrapped the outside with safety wire in a tight, almost perfect pattern. His hands moved with calm precision. Finally, he stepped back. Try, he said. Miller primed the engine. Collins hit the starter. The B-25 coughed once, then twice, then roared awake. Miller grabbed the pressure gauge, steady, holding, not dropping. Collins stared at it. Is it? Miller nodded, almost laughing. It's holding. It's actually holding. The crew nearby let out a breath they'd been holding for 20 minutes. Even the guard looked relieved. Collins walked toward Sato. You saved our mission, he said quietly. But Sato shook his head. No, he said. Engines save itself. I only help. The formation was already taxiing. Collins climbed into the cockpit. The crew scrambled aboard. As the bomber rolled toward the runway, Sato stood at attention, hands clasped behind him, watching silently. The guard whispered, almost grudgingly, Never thought I'd say this, but thank you. Sato didn't answer. He only bowed his head. When Collins returned hours later, the bomber's crew was exhausted but alive. They had flown their mission. They'd taken fire. The left engine had carried them the entire way. Miller checked the fitting the moment the aircraft rolled back in. The shim held. The pressure stayed stable. Sato's repair had survived an entire combat run. But Sato wasn't at the airstrip anymore. He'd been transferred that morning to a different work detail. Collins found the guard from earlier. Where's the mechanic? He asked. The guard cleared his throat. Transported, he said. New camp. Collins frowned. Can we send something to him? A note? The guard shook his head. Not allowed, sir. A month later, Collins received a folded piece of paper from the camp adjutant. No envelope. No formal stamp. Just a single sheet. It was written in careful English. Thank you for trusting me. I fix engines my whole life. This was first time I fix for peace. There was no name, no signature, but Collins knew exactly who wrote it. After the war, when POWs were repatriated, Sato returned to a Japan in ruins. His workshop had been crushed. His town half burned. He rebuilt engines for fishing boats along the harbor, earning his meals one repair at a time. Customers sometimes asked him where he learned to fix the newer American engines. Sato always gave the same small answer. From a plane that needed to fly, he said. In 1957, a letter arrived at his shop. The paper was old, the ink fading. It was from Collins. He'd tracked Sato down through Red Cross lists. The letter was short. I never forgot the morning you saved us. I hope the years have been kind to you. Sato placed the letter in a wooden box beside a single strip of brass, the leftover piece of the shim he had cut that morning. He kept it for the rest of his life. If you walk the old airstrip today, there's nothing left but coral, wind, and scattered rust. But some veterans say that if you listen closely on quiet mornings, you can still hear the steady hum of a B-25 climbing into the March sky, held together by a piece of brass, a strip of wire, and the hands of a man who should have been an enemy, but chose instead to repair what he could.